It is August 4th, 2020, and I'd like to welcome you to our first August board meeting of the Lexington 1 School District. I would like to call the meeting to order. It is now 6:03, I believe. Do I hear a motion to enter into executive session to consider employment recommendations for 2020, 2021, and to hear a property contractual matter related to the Centerville Elementary School sewer lift station?
Madam Chair, I move that the board enter into executive session to consider employment recommendations for 2020-2021 and to discuss a property contractual matter related to a sewer lift station on the Centerville Elementary School site.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Green. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Are there any questions or comments, board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries and it is unanimous. We are now in executive session. We'd like to welcome you back to our August 4th, 2020 board meeting of the Lexington School District 1 Board of Trustees. Do I hear a motion to conclude executive session and begin general session?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Are there any questions or comments, board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries and it is unanimous. It is 6:30 p.m. and I call to order the general session of the August 4th, 2020 board meeting. This is an exception to the standard start time of 7 o'clock p.m. and this was communicated in the public notice. We are meeting tonight in compliance with the governor's orders, CDC recommendations, and Town of Lexington ordinance. The auditorium has been thoroughly cleaned and sanitized before this meeting and will be after this meeting as well. District staff will also sanitize the microphone before and after staff presentations or individuals speak during citizens' participation. All board members, employees, and other individuals in attendance are encouraged to social distance, and mask or face coverings must be worn at all times. There is limited seating to maintain social distancing. Once the seating in this room is filled, attendees will be asked to go to the staff development room, which we are also calling the overflow room, where you can watch the meeting while observing social distancing guidelines. The public is encouraged to watch the meeting on our YouTube channel. After the meeting, the district will follow its previously established process by posting a video of the meeting to the district's YouTube channel, Lexington 1 video site, and our own Lexington 1 website. The district is in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. We have notified the media of the date, time, and place of this meeting. Hold on. The district tapes the meeting for accuracy in preparing the minutes. At this time, I'd like to call on Mr. Mike Anderson for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Anderson?
Thank you. If you'd join me in prayer, please. Oh, loving God, we pray that you will give us courage and wisdom as we face the hard realities which confront us around the world today. May those with gifts for human health and hope discover ways which help us to end threatening infections of COVID-19 and restore our lives to a new day. Give us, we pray, a profound sense of creativity in the community as we care for each other, especially those who are most vulnerable. Hold us in your arms as a loving parent would as we journey into the future. Call us towards deeper faith, believing you are with us, and lift our hearts as we face each moment. In your name we pray. Amen. If you'll join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. That was a beautiful prayer. Board, we're going to 5.0 now. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Are there any questions or comments regarding the agenda, board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor of the agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries and it is unanimous. We're now on to 6.0, which are reports and action items from executive session. Do I hear a motion to approve 8 certified recommendations for the 2020-2021 school year?
Madam Chair, I move that the board accept the 8 certified employment recommendations as provided by Dr. Little and the senior leadership team for the 2020-2021 academic year.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Are there any questions or comments, board? I'd like to ask a question. Mr. Stacy, just before we move on, how many positions do we have remaining, and kind of where are we in terms of starting school with our positions?
So we have 23 certified vacancies. We're working with each of the principals in the schools to make sure that we can cover those vacancies by, we're actually, I don't want to steal the thunder from Howard later when he talks about the online academy, but the virtual academy is really going to help us a little bit with staffing because we can put more kids together in some sections. And so we've worked through that, but we're continuing to look. Some of those 23 vacancies are support staff type positions like guidance counselors or interventionists. We have an interventionist position that's open. So those are probably not as critical to fill at the moment as it is to have a teacher in front of the classroom. And this morning, we had a person in front of every elementary classroom that we have, so we felt pretty good about that.
That's great.
We continue to get resignations because of the COVID-19 and some questions about, virtual teaching and that kind of stuff. So we're continuing to work through that, and I feel confident that we'll be in a pretty good place once school starts.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stacy. Are there any other questions or comments for Mr. Stacy?
I have one. This is Jada. Have y'all reached out to the ones that have resigned and asked them about their reasons and if they were for virtual, if they were interested?
Yes, ma'am, we have. Everyone that has resigned, Kim Scott, in fact, she made a note. She told me on Wednesday, the 29th, she spoke to 3 employees by phone, and, they were not ready to jump into another obligation right now. The second one said it's a better decision for her to stay home and care for her family. And the last one said, in his exact words, "No, ma'am, I don't want to do that." So we are reaching out to them and trying to work with them if that's an option that would work for them. We've kind of changed, I guess. Originally, we had said, I think I shared last month, our last meeting, that there was no guarantee that they would come back to their home school, that if they went to the virtual. We've changed that model. So all our virtual teachers will report to the school that they are assigned in hopes that they would understand that if you're doing your virtual teaching from that school, then there's a good possibility that's where you're going to be when we come back in January. So, and they'll have to come back because it's the kids from that school that are in the virtual program. So we kind of try to work through some of those concerns.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, board?
I was just going to mention, Mr. Stacy, and you don't have a crystal ball, so you can't answer the question I'm going to ask. But I know in today's, I think, House Education Committee, Superintendent Spearman encouraged the General Assembly to lift the $10,000 cap on retirees to help with the situation that we have, that we're going to be facing this year. And actually, if you look at the weekly numbers that SC for Ed compiles, Lexington 1's actually in pretty good shape. And we are traditionally in pretty good shape at this point in time, thanks to you and your staff. But I would just like to know, from your perspective, would the lifting that cap, would that help?
Oh, I think it would be a big help because we do have some retirees that won't come back because of the $10,000 limit. The other side of that, though, is they are typically on the older side, so some of them may have some concerns, but anything like that would help tremendously, I think, and even if we're trying to secure subs, or maybe secure more virtual teachers. I will tell you this, we had 100 teachers initially apply to be 100% virtual. We would need more than that to make the online academy work. Some of those positions we didn't determine could be virtual positions. So we had now gone back, our principals, like at our elementary schools yesterday, the principals, we identified you need 1 virtual teacher at grade 1, 2 virtual teachers at grade 2. We compared that to who had applied to be a virtual teacher to make sure we got those placed, and then they had to go out and tap some people to do that. So that's kind of the process. So yeah, if we had retired teachers that were willing to come back and just teach virtually, we could probably make that work really well.
I've had, my mother's a retired school teacher, and she and a number of her friends have expressed a desire to help, but they don't want to help if it costs them funds.
That's right.
And really, they would be well suited because of their experience doing the virtual teaching.
That's right.
Because they're very experienced at that. So I'm hoping that the General Assembly responds, because that has been a consistent request this summer from education folks.
I think it's been a consistent request even before this year,
Right,
because
right.
we obviously have a teacher shortage, and never really quite understood those teachers that are retired, that are getting paid, are still paying into the retirement system, and they're not getting anything back on the other end of it. So it's not like they're hurting the retirement system, they're getting paid for them.
Thank you.
Any other questions and comments, board? Okay. Let me remind you that Dr. Powers offered a motion to approve 8 certified recommendations for the 2020-2021 school year. Mr. Anderson seconded it. All in favor of this motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries, and it is unanimous. We are now going to move to 6.2, which is a property contractual matter related to Centerville Elementary School, a sewer lift station, something super glamorous. Do I hear let's get a motion on second on the floor, and then we'll open it up for discussion. Do I hear a motion to deed 0.11 acres of property containing a sewer lift station located on the Centerville Elementary School to the town of Lexington?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that the board accepts the administration's recommendation to deed 0.11 acres of property containing a sewer lift station located on the Centerville Elementary School site to the town of Lexington.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Powers. Okay, now, let's open it up, and Mr. Salters, you want to walk us through this contractual matter, please?
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the board. If I could get the screen unmuted, Josh. There we go. All right. So I'll call your attention to the screen just to orient you again. This is Lexington County GIS website, and this is the Centerville Elementary School site. So the school actually ultimately sits on this piece of property here as we look to open it just here in a few weeks. As part of our planning for this site and any site, we have to identify sewer connectivity, and in this case, we partnered with the town of Lexington to connect to the sewer that they had in the nearby vicinity. And we developed a lift station here, approximately in this area right here. And that lift station will serve Centerville Elementary School. But we also developed that with a longer range plan of hopefully in the future picking up our other Gilbert schools and tying them into that lift station and ultimately into the town system. That would allow us to basically get out of the sewer business and not maintain a waste treatment facility in the Gilbert community for our other Gilbert schools, much like we've done in Pelion in recent years with joint municipal water and sewer. This is a survey of the property, and what you'll see is again, as mentioned, it's 0.11 acres. It's completely fenced with some privacy fencing. Basically, what you see from the road is a small structure here. There's an electrical panel and a small roof over this, and everything else is pretty much in the ground. And it will be fenced, or inside of that fence actually, or protected with some trees and so forth around, as described on this this drawing here. So the main benefit of doing this is this gets us out of the sewer business, if you will. The town of Lexington takes over this facility, and any issues, problems, concerns come up with the operation of this pump station will be the responsibility of the town of Lexington. And so we won't get phone calls at 2 o'clock in the morning to go address a faulty pump or something like that related to this station. So So it's a really, really good kind of win-win partnership for both the district and the town on an ongoing basis. So happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Salters. Are there any questions or comments, board, for Mr. Salters? I think it's great, and it's exciting for Gilbert that they're tying into that sewer line, so it's a positive for everybody.
Yeah. And that's, you know, that's something that we're obviously tying in here. We're working long-term on the other part of that project, but we'll keep going with it. This certainly enables that.
Ms. Smith, I was just going to make a comment. I'm always surprised when I'm reminded at how much our school district does that's not just in the classroom. I mean, wastewater treatment, sewer lift stations, road improvements, traffic signals. There's so much under the ground that our school district provides to the community. And so I think this is another great example of that.
Yep. And we do that with good partnerships with our
Yeah,
other
we do have good
municipalities.
partners. Okay. We have a motion from Mr. Oswald, a second from Mr. Powers, and board, as a reminder, this is deeding .11 acres over to the town of Lexington for a sewer lift station. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries, and it is unanimous. At this time, I would like to ask Dr. Greg Little to step down, and the three people I'm going to ask to join him, if y'all would step down and social distance. I'd like to ask Mr. Anderson, Ms. Green, and Mr. Oswald to step down with Dr. Little. You get to see that they have legs. Okay, we're really proud of these three. The South Carolina School Boards Association recognized three of our board members, Mike Anderson, Anne Marie Green, and Tim Oswald, for their accomplishments during the association's 2019-2020 Boardmanship Institute. The Institute offers a year-round training curriculum which helps board members develop skills and stay up to date on state and national education issues. Each year, about 80% of board members statewide attend at least one training session. Workshops focus on school law, advocacy, and legislation, improving board operations, leadership for improving student achievement, and more. Board members can achieve up to 6 levels of recognition by participating in conferences and training. Mr. Anderson and Ms. Green have reached level 4, and they will receive a certificate and a pin with a blue stone in it tonight. And Mr. Oswald has received level 2. He receives a certificate and a silver pin. And I'm always proud of this because I think it's always important for us to educate ourselves, and we are always in a learning mode. So I'm really proud of these three board members for attaining this level. So let's give them a round of applause. Okay. Yeah. Okay, let me get a sip of some water. Hold on. This one's long. This is a long read, so bear with me. We're now going to go to 8.0, which is citizens participation. Lexington County School District 1's Board of Trustees solicits the advice and counsel of its citizens. To encourage this participation, the board provides a citizens participation period during each of its regular monthly board meetings. In order to speak, you must be a student currently attending a Lexington District 1 school, the parent or legal guardian of a student currently attending a Lexington District 1 school, or a taxpayer residing in the Lexington District 1 attendance area. You may comment on agenda items, school operations, policies, programs, or other matters. You may not speak about specific individuals, whether they are students or staff. There are other ways to bring those issues to our attention. We're adding this sentence because we would like to remind people, we want to remind you that this meeting is being live streamed and that the recording of this meeting will be made public and the internet never dies. So make sure what you're saying, you want it to live in perpetuity on the internet. We want to give everyone who came tonight an opportunity to speak, and in order to do that, the board chair will call on each speaker by name and ask you to approach the lectern in the back. It's right back there. The board will not reply to your remarks nor take any action during the board meeting in response to your comments or questions. and you may address the board for up to 3 minutes. Please do not clap or make any comments either while an individual speaks or after he or she finishes. This is not kind to the speaker and slows down the process. As you came in tonight, you received a card to fill out if you indicated you wanted to speak. That card asks for your name, address, and other information. However, we will only read out your name and town you reside in when it is your turn to speak, and if you are the parent of a student, we will announce the name of their school. If you did not fill out a card but wish to speak, please hold up your hand and someone from the communications office will provide you with a card. Is there anyone else who wants to speak to the board? I just have one card tonight. Okay. Anyone who is uncomfortable addressing the board in person due to all of our restrictions with the COVID-19 pandemic, you may reach out to the board by email, telephone, or mail, and our contact information is available on the Lexington One website, and we always welcome messages from our community. At this time, I'd like to call on Ms. Lauren Ann Pellington. She wants to discuss how our plans are handled. She is a resident of Lexington, and she has a child that attends Pleasant Hill Elementary. Ms. Pellington?
Good evening, board members, Dr. Little, district personnel. Okay, sorry. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak tonight. I am a mother of 2 boys at Pleasant Hill Elementary. We reside in that area. I also am a teacher at Midway Elementary, and I've been here for the past 3 years. We moved here in 2017 with no idea of what is the pandemic and how to handle it. I originally came here as a teacher because of it being Lexington One. I wanted to come to you tonight wearing 3 hats. First, as a mother, I want to thank the district for working tirelessly. Sorry, I can talk in front of a classroom.
You're fine. You're fine. You're doing
Sorry.
good.
Working tirelessly to figure out these new plans of education. In the Together Talks with Dr. Little, I have learned various plans and how they have changed, revised, and been revised again multiple times. As a parent, I was very overwhelmed when we closed in March. And I'm very grateful for the steps that have been taken to ensure my child's safety then and even now returning. Secondly, I am here as a teacher. It was hard to abruptly leave in March and never see that group of kids again. I am a teacher of the significant, profound population, and it was very, very hard. They are, like any other teacher, my kids. I want to thank the district for the hours that you've put in listening to us. And I also, as a special ed teacher, want to thank SPED Services for that as well. There's been a lot of questions from parents that have been guided through the board, through Dr. Little's office, and through the special education office. I continue to ask for support because we as teachers are scared. We are scared going back for our kids. We are scared as parents coming home, and we are scared in general. I think that's everyone. I had a friend who is in the teaching profession who contracted COVID. She thought she got away with it. She was doing everything right. She quarantined for 14 days only to find out that her child also contracted it and quarantined. She's now scared, not only for her kids, she has multiples, but she's also scared for everyone else because mild symptoms doesn't mean that there's not anguish. The poor child was throwing up, 104 fever for multiple days. These are things that, as teachers, we are scared going back into the classroom. I'm the first one, I'll be lined up day one to go back because they are my kids. But that is just something that we are continuing to be scared of. Finally, I'm here as the local chapter president of the SCEA, which is the South Carolina Educators Association. I've taken on this role after many years of not really having anyone present. My main thing, and I have tons written here, I want a connection with the board. I want a connection with the district. I want us to be able to work together again. I want to offer professional development in correlation with the district. And I want to be able to at least have our teachers feel like they are continuing to have a voice. In the end, thank you so much for your time. I would definitely love to meet with the board, either individually or as a whole, as well as Dr. Little. And I hope that together we can continue to build our Lexington One family and bounce our ideas off of each other and build stronger together as one.
Thank you, Ms. Pellington. We really appreciate that, and we appreciate all you do for our students and for your own children. I know it is a lot these days. We appreciate all you're doing. Dr. Little, I'm going to give you this card at the end of the meeting, and we'll have somebody
Ms.
touch
Pellington
base
and
with
I
you.
actually already have a meeting scheduled next
Oh,
week, so
great.
we're a step ahead.
Great, okay, thank you. Okay, at this time, Board, we have an action item. This is 9.1. This is authorization of the superintendent as the official Title I representative. And do I hear a motion for the Board of Trustees to author the superintendent as its Title I representative?
Madam Chair, I move that the Board of Trustees authorize the superintendent as its Title I representative. This will give the superintendent the authorization to make day-to-day Title I decisions on behalf of the Board of Trustees.
Great, thank you, Dr. Guyton. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Are there any questions or comments, or Dr. Talley, is there anything you want to add? Okay, any questions or comments, Board?
How many Title I schools do we have in?
We have 9 Title I schools. Would you like to know the budget
I would,
allocation for this year?
yes, please.
Our budget this year is $3,600,000.
And how is that, is that budget specifically allocated for certain services?
It is allocated for several things. It can be used for personnel. It can be used for professional learning, for programs. It can also be used for family engagement. And we are audited every year, and we've always had clean audits.
Awesome, thank you.
Are
Well, I'm sorry, one more question. What is the criteria to be classified as a Title I school?
The criteria is based on total pupils in poverty, and it's based on the what we know as free and reduced lunch. It's one piece of criteria. Also, Medicaid for 3 years if a family's on Medicaid. Foster care, migrant and homebound and runaway families.
Thank you.
Are any of these funds the ones that Mrs. DeVos was talking about holding back if school districts weren't in compliance with some of the federal guidelines?
She
for
did talk
returning to
about
school?
federal funds. I'm not sure which ones Secretary DeVos was referring to,
I
but
think this was
probably
those
some of
funds.
these,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's what I was thinking too. Any other questions or comments, Board? Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor of the authorizing Dr. Little as our Title I representative, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries and it is unanimous. At this time, we're going to turn it over to Dr. Little. Board, the rest of the night is our reports only. And we're going to start with a superintendent's update from Dr. Little, and then we're going to move into some updates on our back-to-school plan. So, Dr. Little, I'm going to let you take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As everybody remembers, we originally scheduled this meeting as a quick human resources update meeting, as we just need, to vote on things and kind of, we call it a skinny meeting, be in and out. But we also wanted to take this time tonight to, again, provide updates on where we are over 2 weeks. Lots of work has been done over the last 2 weeks, and just keeping the board updated and providing an opportunity to ask some questions about where we are. So there's a lot going to come at you tonight, so I just wanted to go ahead and not spend too much time on my update. So we're going to start just very quickly with some brief things, and then you'll notice we're moving into very specifically about where we are on the Online Learning Academy, and some things about student safety that we want to talk about as well. So a number of things we need to just go over tonight and provide you some information. So Ms. Hill, if you would, just a quick update on where we are with communications.
So board chair, Dr. Little, we've been busy, as you can imagine. The Stronger Together website is keeping us very busy as we create material, including videos, documents, information, or infographics. And we've been updating the webpage as we make changes to our plans. Over the last 3 months, that our homepage received 346,503 views. The Stronger Together page received 101,908 views of that. So it's by far the most active page on our website. We've created the concept of Together Talk.
101,000, is that what you just said?
Yes, 101,908 views since we created it. We created it June the 3rd. So we also have created a new concept called Together Talks. There have been a lot of people that have helped with that and been involved in that, most especially our star celebrity, Dr. Little.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So it's
Face made for radio is what I have.
so it has given people, what they constantly are telling me is that it gives them a feeling that they're in an intimate conversation with Dr. Little. And so the relaxed, intimate conversation that he has with his guests is able to really bring people into it. So we've done 4 talks since July 15th. We did an employee talk that has had 22,605 YouTube views. It's had 248 likes. The parent talk had 16,117 views, 291 likes, and most importantly, it had 335 Facebook shares. The mass chat has had 6,616 views, 97 likes, and 54 shares. The one we most recently did that explained the difference between e-learning and the Online Learning Academy had 1,819 views, 28 likes, and 49 Facebook shares. So you can see those are all active videos. We've also had a lot of increased media attention, especially about our plan as we revealed it. We've had at least 100 news articles and television reports related to school reopening. Once we released that plan, Dr. Little had to do a lot of media interviews for us, and he did them very well. Many of them being about our reentry plan. You might find it interesting that those same interviews have been picked up by media in all the surrounding states, including North Carolina, Georgia, even some as far down as Florida, and I saw one in D.C., had run in D.C. So it's being widely shared. So we really appreciate his willingness to do all that and his innate ability to do it well. So that's pretty much our quick update.
I just want to commend you and your staff. I've watched all of them, and I've also gotten a ton of feedback from our parents, and it really helped answer a lot of questions, and I thought you guys did a great job because you really addressed the concerns of the community.
There's a group working behind the scenes that includes Dr. Natalie Osborne-Smith, Mary Gaskins, Kimberly Freeman, and Amy Wood. And so they've helped us craft questions and go through the questions that came in online. So while he was doing the interviews, they were going through the questions, and Catherine was involved, Catherine McPhail, and they were feeding those questions to us at the end, in addition to the ones he'd already answered. So a lot of people have worked on this.
Well, and I think those, I've also watched all of the Together Talks, and I think they've been excellent. And I think that goes to the point that we all know, and sometimes we forget, but the more information we can share, the more reassured folks are about what's happening. And we're in such a period of uncertainty and anxiety that I think Dr. Little's calming, confident communication of what Lexington One is doing has really helped our community understand that they're in good hands.
Right. He's a very relaxed interview, and that and the fact that he is relaxes the people watching, the audience. So.
Well, there you go. Thank you very much. I hope my mom's watching tonight. She'll be very happy about that.
So he'll be available after the meeting for autographs.
Thank you very much. All right. Mr. Stacy has already shared with Human Resources. Mr. Stacy, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I got a couple of things, but
Okay.
I'm not a relaxed interviewer, so. We have done a few things. We've been working with Howard to staff the Online Learning Academy. We continue to work with the principals to do face-to-face staffing. But one of the biggest things that we've had to deal with in the last couple of weeks, Meredith Siebert and Jennifer Berry have been extremely busy communicating with staff and teachers with respect to virtual options as they relate to their specific positions and addressing requests for accommodations. Our stance has been that we aren't working from home, that when we do the virtual option, we will do it at school. And so our goal is to try to make that space at school as safe as possible for those. That's our position. And so we've had a lot of conversations, spent a lot of time on the phone with individuals to try to make that work. And we are currently working on a model with Shane Phillips and Amy Woods to try to help us determine how we're going to shift from the hybrid model to face-to-face, or from the hybrid model to virtual, some data points that would trigger that shift. And so that's in motion right now. And that's pretty much what we do every day. Thank
Good
you.
deal.
This is Jada. I have a question, Mr. Stacy. If an employee needs accommodations through ADA,
Yes, ma'am.
how would they go about getting those?
That's why Jennifer Berry and Meredith Siebert are the two that contacts for that. So what they do is they contact Jennifer Berry, and she walks them through that process. And then we, again, our first accommodation would be to try to make that space at school as safe as possible. And then beyond that, it's whatever the particular accommodation might be needed.
Okay.
But there is a process.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Instructional Services has been hard at work as well. So Dr. Talley?
Thank you, Dr. Little. I would like to update the board on 2 areas, and then I'll ask Mr. Bissell to update you on a third. I'd like to talk to you about the fine arts and where we are with that. Our marching band programs began practice this week. White Knoll High School started yesterday. River Bluff High and Papillion High School is next week, and Gilbert High School and Lexington High School start August the 17th. Orchestra typically does not hold practice over the summer, but those teachers are preparing for social distancing and safety guidelines for the classroom once we do return to school. This is the same status for the visual arts, dance, chorus, and theater, and for elementary music and arts. Dance teams will be holding practices this summer, and they'll follow, of course, the same social distancing and COVID checks as our athletes. We've worked with Mr. Salters and his team to provide PPE, to order that equipment for marching band during the summer practice, and we appreciate that collaboration. We have delayed, this is information for the board, we made the decision to delay 5th grade band and strings for first semester and start that back up in spring semester. We hope by then that COVID will be more under control than it certainly is now, and this will give our teachers an opportunity to adjust to their new teaching schedules. We will be creating work sessions for our arts teachers to assist in virtual opportunities for students and professional learning for teachers who will be teaching virtually this first semester. I would like to give the board an update on childcare for our employees. We do have a working group who's been hard at work trying to grapple with that issue. We have surveyed our employees' needs for childcare, and there are many, and those numbers vary from school to school. We do plan to perhaps use support staff to assist with that childcare. It's also possible that we'll need to use community volunteers to assist us with that need. And the child care will be at each child's school of attendance, and students will be able to have their lunch there at the same rate that they currently pay. We also last week met with community daycares. Information was shared about our reentry plan and support that we can offer daycares in our community. Each daycare received a survey to share services that they provide, which we will be developing a resource to share that information with our families. And we'll also be offering sessions for our daycares on how we can help them help support students with e-learning. So that work continues, but that's the update on that. And speaking of virtual learning, I'm anxious to turn my time over to Mr. Bissell, who has done a yeoman's job of getting us ready for Lexington One Online Learning Academy. Howard's worked very hard, and he's had some help, but he's done a great job, so I'll let him tell you about that.
Thank you, Dr. Talley. Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Little. Excited to give you an update on Lexington One Online Learning Academy this evening. I'll start with an update on enrollment by grade level. Currently, we have just a little over 6,700 students who have chosen the Online Learning Academy option for this coming fall semester. That breakdown by grade level is about 2,900 at elementary school, 1,800 at middle school, and about 2,000 at the high school. So these numbers have grown significantly over the past weeks, and we've been able to repurpose some support to meet the demands of scheduling and planning for the same start date as our face-to-face students. So, we're very fortunate to have work with human resources in schools to have the support of a data specialist, assistant principals, a curriculum specialist, a counselor, and an administrative assistant, all coordinating with school-based leadership on getting this program up and running.
Mr. Bissell, is there one attendance area that, like, are you seeing a pattern among attendance areas, like some attendance areas have more parents that have chosen that than others?
Yes, ma'am. The White Knoll attendance area kind of sticks out. Right now, I don't have those numbers right in front of me, but the Carolina Springs, White Knoll Middle feeder pattern up to White Knoll High School seems to have a significantly larger number of enrollees at this point. Some information on the scheduling details and organizational structure by grade level in the academy. This scheduling process is it's very complex, it's very complicated, but we're on track to complete the largest part of it by the end of this week. At elementary schools, our goal is to schedule students with teachers from their home school for their core and content-related arts, and at middle schools, we formed pods of middle schools, sister schools, if you will, to allow them to share resources and help us out with some of the scheduling complexities that are there. So our pods consist of Lexington Middle School and Meadow Glen Middle School in a pod, White Knoll Middle School and Carolina Springs Middle School, Gilbert Middle School and Pelion Middle School, and then Beechwood and Pleasant Hill Middle School. And within those pods, we're creating grade level teams in our core content areas made up of both teachers and students from both of those schools. And we're also working through the logistics of scheduling students in advocacy sections and exploratory courses. And by creating those pods, it allows us to leverage the FTE and share some of those students, and also give students some familiar faces, hopefully, when we're able to transition back into a face-to-face environment. At our high schools, we are taking students' existing schedules as they sit in Power School, and we're enrolling them in as many courses as we can based on the teachers that we have to teach them. There are a few things you have to consider when you're making a decision to offer a course online. You have to have the demand by the students, you have to have the teacher to teach it, and the course has to work in an online environment. Not everything transfers. In many cases, we're going to reach back out to teachers who indicated they're interested in teaching online so we can finalize those schedules. Our students are going to receive special ed, intervention, ESOL, and counseling services through their home schools, and we anticipate that we'll have schedules finalized by early next week. It's really important to us that we're providing a high-quality option for students. This is not just a patch for the time being. This needs to be something that's on par with the experience that we offer in our face-to-face classrooms. And so we are working really hard to give our teachers the support that they need to provide high-quality online instruction. Many of our teachers have been preparing for this fall all summer. We've got a robust catalog of professional learning opportunities they continue to take advantage of, and we're going to continue to offer those throughout the remainder of the summer, really, all the way through the beginning of the school year, and continue to provide those opportunities for them to hone their craft and get used to what will be a new environment. This is going to prepare our teachers not just to use technology, not just to learn how to push the buttons or use a particular tool, but really more importantly, to show them how to structure their online teaching in a way that's going to engage students and create meaningful experiences for them that's going to keep them coming back and keep them engaged in their learning. Building an online community of learners and really establishing healthy relationships with their online students is going to be a primary focus for us, for each of our teachers in each of our classes, and creating a relevant experience for our students in that online environment. Our model in grades K-8, it's going to focus largely on a regular schedule, providing consistency in structures, but also live video conferencing with students to introduce them to new skills and concepts. It's not going to be primarily an asynchronous or a recorded session or a set of materials that are provided digitally. It's going to be an engaging experience for students on a regular schedule. They're going to have opportunities to practice those things, receive consistent feedback from their teachers as they master them. And it's going to be really common for a teacher to schedule live conferencing opportunities with small groups of students based on their needs to help them along, as they consider the data that the students are producing on their learning progressions. Teacher feedback and support, it's really going to be a critical piece of that model. Same opportunities for high school. However, that's going to be a little more self-directed for high school. That's going to look and feel for high school students more like a traditional virtual school experience has felt for them. We have students that are taking online courses all the time at our high school levels. But we are still really going to focus on the teacher engagement, student engagement through teacher feedback and support. And they'll be enrolled in online courses and access a variety of instructional resources as they work with their teachers through those instructional progressions and those courses to earn high school credit. I'm happy to take questions, but first, I really have to take a moment to thank our principals, our assistant principals, and our teachers for their agility and collaboration over the past few weeks as we've shifted schedules and partnered to make this work. Also, our human resources team, our information technology team, Dr. Natalie Osborne-Smith, our instructional coordinators, and our online academy staff are just continuing to work long hours in service of our students and families. But I'd be happy to take any questions if you have them.
If I can jump in very quickly before the board asks questions. Mr. Bissell, we talked about this a little bit on our Together talk. Will you explain the advantages of what makes the online learning academy such a good option as opposed to other types of options that people may have, other type of online options?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think first and foremost, this is a Lexington One program. We're featuring our teachers, we're featuring our instructional models, we're featuring our resources, and we're keeping our kids close to us. And then I think it's important to consider that someday things are going to go back to normal. And when they do, our kids will be poised to slip back into a more normal schedule, having been a part of our system and the things that we can provide our students directly.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
So I've learned to repeat things. It sounds like K through 8th grade will be synchronous, and then 9th through 12th will be desynchronous. Is the primary model? I mean, there'll obviously be some synchrony in the 9th through 12th, correct?
Yes, sir, absolutely. Everybody's favorite vocabulary word.
Yeah, it's tough to say. Okay.
That's right.
And then obviously there's a lot of questions about the online academy, and obviously tonight's taping of this session we can steer our constituents to, but how else are we communicating to the community what the online academy will look like?
We've posted a number of resources to the Stronger Together webpage. That's a great place to go and get some information. There's a number of different resources there that will talk parents through what a day in the life of an online student might look like at different grade levels, different expectations for parents, especially of younger students, an overview of what those instructional models look like, and then as well as the Together talk that really dug in on a number of different questions that have come up. At this point right now, I'm really excited to get these schedules finished, and so we can start to have some additional, more specific communication. I've had hundreds of conversations over the past few weeks, answering some very specific questions here or there about those schedules. I want to make sure that we have all the information right before we make it public. And so we're getting to a point we're very, very close to a point to where we'll be able to make some more specific information available to families. Thank you.
How many students have we not heard from?
That is an excellent question. I don't have that number. We can get it for you.
Okay, thank you.
I do know, I can tell you at this point, Dr. Phillips' office has compiled the data and then has shared with schools what their data is as far as responses go, and schools are reaching out to make contact with those students. There's one school in particular I checked with the other day. They were still looking for a response from about 30 or 35 students.
I do have that data, if you don't mind, Howard. I
No,
can
ma'am.
share that with you,
Sure.
Board. As of July 16th, we were unable to make contact with 54 students in the district.
Great.
Okay, this is Jada. I have a couple questions.
Yes, ma'am.
What is the life of Lula? Is this something that even after this is over with, that will still remain?
Yes, ma'am. I feel like an online learning experience is really a modality that many of our parents and students are going to want moving forward. I think it's well established in outside of K-12 education, particularly in higher ed. But in talking with businesses and industries, learning online is the way that they do their training and their professional development, and it's pretty widespread because of its efficiency and its ability to be personalized for learners. So I mean, I truly believe that model could be an option for students moving forward. It may not be for everybody, but I think exposing students to that environment, giving them the opportunity to work and learn more about how to manage themselves and self-regulate themselves and be more self-directed in an environment like that is definitely doing our families and our students a service before they leave us in our K-12 system.
Thank you. I know you said professional development had been offered. How many teachers have taken advantage of that? I know many said that since they weren't getting paid for it, they were going to wait until their contract started. So I was just wondering how many have taken advantage of it to this point.
Yeah, I don't have that number off the top of my head. I know that we've been maxing out some sessions over the past month. We've actually had to work with our IT department to lift the participant cap on some of our Zoom meetings. So that we could get closer to 400 people in there. We have people in waiting rooms after 100 people had signed up for it pretty quick. So I mean, I think it's being taken advantage of greatly. I'm sure I could get some numbers for you if you need some specifics.
Okay. And this may not be a question for you. As far as our virtual teachers, they'll be teaching in their classroom at their assigned school. Will they have other duties assigned to them?
No, ma'am, really the way that this is going to work best is for them to be able to focus on their caseload, their students that they're working with online. I know that there's the potential for that to happen while being there in their building, and I think that's another step in a series of conversations that we need to have with schools and with teachers, and really just talk about what's going to be the best scenario for students and what's really a brand new environment for us when we're coming back in the fall.
Howard, we have made the decision that if they're a virtual teacher, that they will not have duties before or after school. We made that decision maybe day before yesterday, so we've communicated that to principals. And somehow it got out that they were gonna have to do duties as well, but that's not the case. Their numbers, the virtual numbers, especially at the elementary school, are going to be a little bit higher than they would if they were doing face-to-face. So their responsibilities to the kids are going to be a little bit more, and that's how we offset the duties and responsibilities outside.
Okay. As far as instructional assistants, will those be pulled from the classrooms to act as subs?
From like in elementary,
Right.
like kindergarten? Well, the kindergarten instructional assistant will be with the kindergarten teacher, and they'll be doing those jobs. One of the things we are going to have to do, and we're going to have to think through this, as part of what the model plan was for auxiliary staff, is we got to think about, in the past, what we've done with substitutes is how school secondary teachers could come in during their planning time and cover for a teacher that was absent if we didn't have a sub. That won't happen this coming year because if you think about the hybrid model, the A cohort's in class face-to-face, the B cohort is going to have there's an expectation for that classroom teacher to have contact with that B cohort during that day, which is during their planning time. So we can't ask them to cover classes and also do that at the same time. So we've told principals they can't count on teachers, like classroom teachers, to do substituting if we don't have a substitute. So what we got to think through is like all hands on deck. We got to think through who are the people in your building that could cover classes if we didn't have a substitute. Now our goal, our hope, is that we're going to have substitutes because typically the reason we were short on substitutes last year is we do a lot of professional development during the school year, during the day, and a lot of times the PD substitutes really tap into our pool. So we're not going to be doing that way first semester. So our hope is that we will have a pool of substitutes, 200, 300 substitutes that we can count on to sub for teachers when they're out. But recognize that at some point, we may have to have a last-minute sub come in. We don't have the substitute. Somebody's got to cover that class. So we need to have a plan for who in our building can cover that class on that particular day. And then beyond that, and I've talked to Central Services about this today, SLT is going to look at their staff on Monday and try to identify some people that if a school got tapped where they didn't have anybody there and we needed somebody on the spot, they can call up here, and we'll go out like we did that day when SC Ed did their thing. We went out and substitute. Well, we can do that too. I mean, everybody's going to be all hands on deck so we can meet the needs of kids.
Oh, does that mean that board members can help sub as well?
If you want to do that, I guess
Yeah, I
we
know they
could.
did on SC for Ed Day. Yeah, I think that would be fun.
Thank you.
I'm
We'll
up for
tap
that.
into that.
Okay. Let's see here. I think a couple of the other questions I have, I'll just wait until a couple of these other reports are done. But thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Bissell?
And Ms. Garris, I was just going to comment, there are some legal things with a board member subbing for pay. We can't do it for pay. I really want to help because of the situation that all the school districts are going to be in. So I've applied to be a sub in Lexington 5, just because I feel like if I'm helping one school, then I'm helping all schools. And so that's something to consider is maybe signing up to sub in another district. And, maybe encouraging some folks that in other districts to apply to sub in our district. There's just a whole pay for, because we're ultimately the top of the food chain, and so we can't work in the district for pay, but we can work and help in other districts. So that's an idea.
Do we have a policy that says we can't work for pay? I know teachers can't receive pay.
It's
as board members.
an ethical thing.
Okay, I just know during the SC for Ed Day, I know a couple of y'all subbed in the classroom. So even if it was on a volunteer basis, I wouldn't mind doing it if we were allowed to volunteer as subs. I've got sub training. I've been in the classroom. I'd be glad to go back in there.
Well, I'm sure Lexington 3 and Lexington 5 would love to have you.
Yeah.
And I think that if we are committed to helping, I think that we can help in other districts, and I think that's a big gesture, so.
All right, thank you. Again, lots of work happening there, Mr. Bissell. Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Salters, we want to talk a little bit about our food services, where we are, updates there, as well as some of our safety and security measures that we're going to be communicating out over the next 7 to 10 days.
Thank you, Dr. Little. I'll start with safety and security. As you probably heard, Superintendent Spearman came out earlier, or late last week, early this week, and indicated that all students and staff will be wearing masks. And so we've been preparing for that, I guess, for a couple months now. And so we have purchased masks for students. We purchased masks for staff. The State Department of Education actually distributed some masks for staff as well. Cloth masks is what they distributed. We've got some very specific areas where we have high contact with some of our most fragile children, and so we have some additional protective equipment that we've purchased for those staff, and we'll be rolling that out. Various desk barriers, some of the things you see here in this meeting room, out front in our receiving area. And in our schools, we've got similar plexiglass panels that are going up in the high contact areas as we go. So a lot of that's been going on. We've purchased hand sanitizer dispensers for every classroom, some additional backup hand sanitizer for when those dispensers potentially, should they run out. We're navigating some interesting waters. The state fire marshal actually has some restrictions on the volume of hand sanitizer that can be stored in a building at one time. And so when you put 200 classrooms together, 150 classrooms together like a large high school, and you want to put some hand sanitizer in it, you all of a sudden are meeting some of those thresholds. So we're negotiating some interesting waters with that. We are being very specific with our staff about hand sanitizer and about cleaners. You've heard a number of recalls probably related to hand sanitizer, so we are not encouraging staff to bring in things that they've bought off the shelf, and that's why we're committed to providing that, those resources for them.
Mr. Salters, we have had some questions from parents about, since the children are going to be eating in the classroom and they possibly would have food on their surfaces, about the contamination of these strong cleaning products, contaminating the child and the food. And so that's
Right,
something
and
we
so
have
that's
heard from
obviously
parents. There's a concern.
Yeah, that's obviously a consideration, and that's why we are providing an individual spray bottle for every classroom that is for a ready-to-use product that is food safe, but that does kill bacteria. And we're making that available for teachers. We're not requiring that they use that on any certain intervals or whatever, because we're going to be cleaning classrooms every day. But we know that some of our teachers will want more of a comfort level, and there's going to be times where they need to do some additional cleaning, and a staff member may not be available from the custodial services area. So we're stocking all the classrooms with that cleaner, additional paper towels to use for those cleaning purposes as well. You've seen a lot on electrostatic sprayers. We're going to be using those in all of our schools and for cleaning of the classrooms and other high traffic areas. Basically, we're going to have some staff dedicated to doing nothing but wiping down high contact surfaces all day. And so those are your door handles, your bathroom fixtures, things like that. And so we've been doing that in this building since we came back, and that seems to be effective. And we are tuning our HVAC systems. We're already under maintenance contracts where we replace filters every couple of months and those types of things. So, but we're tuning those to get maximum airflow in our classrooms, working with ASHRAE standards and the CDC guidelines to meet those standards. It is a difficult balance, though. A lot of things you hear about this virus is fresh air is good, having airflow coming through. We have operable windows in most of our facilities for safety reasons, but those operable windows are not intended to be opened on a regular basis. And so what that does is it allows humidity to come into the room, can cause an air conditioner to overcool, and because it can't keep up with the dehumidification, and then you get things growing in there that we do not want growing in there. So it's a delicate balance with as much humidity we have in our air. So we're working through that. On the security side, we are going to be working with some modified drills this year for fire, tornado, lockdown, lockout, and we're getting some guidance from SLED and State Fire Marshal and others. Basically, what it looks like right now we're going to be able to do is review our procedures for these drills, and then not go through them as a whole school at one time, but individual classrooms will be able to do these things on a smaller scale, so that you don't have mass gatherings of students outside. But a teacher can go over the fire drill procedures and then walk her students out or his students out, and then bring them back another teacher can do it, so and so forth. We're working through arrival and dismissal procedures now and movement of students. Obviously, arrival and dismissal are two key gathering points, and we're looking at some staggered movements within the building, and using some electronic means to control the arrival and dismissal flow, or mainly the dismissal flow. Arrival kind of happens naturally, but we'll have electronic communication. Essentially, you'll have someone at the entrance with a walkie-talkie. They'll say, Mr. Anderson's here to pick up their child. The children are waiting in the classroom. That name is keyed into a spreadsheet the teachers are monitoring, and Mr. Anderson's child is then sent to the front for him to pick the child up. we've actually been using this process at several schools over the past few years, and it's been quite effective. So looking at rolling that out, there'll be some other processes. It's really a school-specific scenario there, but we're working through that with each school to make sure that happens. Food services has been an unbelievable challenge for us through this pandemic, and I'm sure you're aware that our food service operation is a self-sustaining business, and so it is not. It is designed to run and operate itself and make a profit and support the employees that are a part of that. And so we've taken quite a hit over the last few months. There is some legislation that's being considered now to allow us to continue feeding the way we are, and that's basically free for all students. But that hasn't passed yet at the federal level. But right now we have plans to distribute food via carts at the elementary level, and so students will leave their classroom and get food from a cart that's located outside their classroom, go back in and eat at their desk. Middle and high schools, it'll be more of a grab and go scenario where they'll go to the cafeteria, grab their food, and then go to a designated space to eat. But we will not have large, tightly gathered groups of students eating. We also are not allowing any outside food deliveries. Over the last few years, Grubhub and Uber Eats and some of these others have become quite popular with students to have food delivered to their offices, and we're not allowing that. And that really ties into the idea that we're trying to minimize outside traffic into our buildings, and so only visitors that have a bona fide reason for being in the school are going to be allowed to come into the school this year. So we're really trying to focus on minimizing outside contact coming in. So we are also looking at being able to feed our virtual students, and so that likely will be a model where they similar to what we're doing now, where food will be prepped, a number of meals will be prepped, and they can come by the school and pick up those meals during a certain window of time throughout the day and have those for the course of a week. So a lot of variables going into food service, but we're continuing to work through those. And I think Dr. Little mentioned this today, it's really everything we're dealing with is a moving target. 2 weeks ago we were not having masks for pre-K through 2, and now we are, and so that's what we do. We monitor and adjust, and we'll be doing that, I'm sure, with food service as things continue to change. I do have a little show and tell for you. This is in front of you here is a typical pre-K through second grade classroom table. This is some of the new furniture from the bond referendum, and it's been rolled out of a number of our elementary schools. Traditionally, we would have 4 students sitting at that table. And so what we've done for these younger students, we're going to be providing these plexiglass barriers. And much like we treat security, we're treating the PPE as just a layered approach. We feel like students at that younger age group might have some trouble wearing masks and keeping those on all day. And so having the plexiglass dividers will just be a kind of a secondary layer of protection for the students as they sit at those tables. So those will be rolled out to our elementary schools here shortly. I'll be happy to answer any other questions you have.
I just want to commend the food service department. I went and helped a week before last over at Rosenwald, and my goodness, it is so much work. It is just, and that team, they're just so dedicated and so inspirational, and boy, so organized. They have that thing down to a science. So I just want to commend them, and for all the deliveries and the bus drivers that have taken the food out and the ladies that stay back and prepare everything. It's just amazing. Amazing. Do we have a count of how many meals we've served?
I'll get that for you.
Yeah, share that with us, because it's just mind-boggling how much we've done this summer.
It's an unbelievable operation.
It is.
And they've jumped right in and basically reinvented their whole business.
Yeah, and now that they've added the produce boxes, it's unreal.
Yeah.
So tell them thank you.
Well, and I was going to ask, this kind of dovetails with my questions to Dr. Talley earlier about Title I. I know there are some districts in the area that are Title I districts, like Richland 1, and their food service is provided for every student in the district, regardless of means. I mean, are we close to that classification as being a Title I district? I mean, I know this isn't the time to like lobby for that, but that just seems like something that would give us access to those, the meals for everybody, which seems in this particular instance would certainly be a safer, easier way to provide meals for.
Well, I mean, the thing that we're going to be able to do is, provide grab and go. The biggest benefit to what that does is it allows everybody to eat for free. And up until this point, the federal government has provided that during COVID. So, but for our district, I mean, we're still a ways away from qualifying for something like that. But should the federal government extend this grant, which hopefully they will, through the year, it would simplify
It sure
things
would.
a lot for us.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hey, this is Jada. I have a couple questions. Has the grant from the USDA been approved to provide food service on the days when the children aren't scheduled to attend? I knew that was in the frequently asked questions. Y'all were waiting on a grant to be approved?
So we have not heard yet. We can provide meals, but right now they're going to be paid at whatever rate the child is eligible for.
Okay.
And so we're still waiting to hear from that.
Okay. I've gotten a few questions about the cleaners and the chemicals that are used. Where can we find that information?
I can get you some specifics on the cleaner and the tablets that are being used.
Okay, thank you. Also, Anne Marie, back to what we were talking about earlier where you said the Ethics Commission. I actually emailed them on July the 22nd to ask about a teacher running for school board. And I asked, do they need to resign before they file? Or are they able to resign after they take the oath of office? I mean, before they take the oath of office. And she says, there's nothing in the Ethics Act that prohibits a teacher from serving on a school board. They are only requirements that they recuse themselves when issues affecting their economic interest arise.
Well, and I actually was able, I recalled, we actually have two board policies, BCB and BHA, that state a board member may not receive pay as a teacher of a free public school that is located in the same school district of which that person is a trustee. So we actually have board policies that prohibit us being paid.
As a teacher, but not as a sub.
Well, I interpret that as as an employee of the district.
I would say a teacher is different from every other employee.
I think this just precludes any compensation.
Yeah, I think the reason being, if I can jump in on that, is because we determine the pay and we would be our own boss, and that's just a really strange alignment.
Well, that might actually give subs a raise. That would be a good idea. Okay, that's something to talk about. Either way, if it's just our policy that's keeping us from doing it, then that's something for us to talk about. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Salters.
Yes, ma'am. And I did get a number on the number of meals served to this point. It's 701,256. And we have a distribution again tomorrow. That's the last one.
I'm sorry, but I'm just going to clarify one more time. Our policies, Ms. Garris, are based on a section of South Carolina Code of Laws 59-19 that prohibits Board of Trustees members from receiving pay in the same district on which they serve on the board. Mm-hmm. So it's a part of state law. So.
I know there's a state law about receiving pay as a teacher while serving on the school board. And it says teacher in state law as well. I actually probably have that somewhere.
All right, our final presentation for the evening is Mr. Jeff Caldwell with Student Services. Not our final presentation of the evening, but as part of this particular section is our final presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Little, and let me start off with an apology for keeping my hand to my face. For some unknown reason, my mask broke moments ago, so I apparently have too much face for this mask. And so,
It's that handful of M&Ms you keep on.
Thank you for that.
Everybody hold your breath, get that mask off.
Thank you. Now, if this one breaks out, I may just go ahead and exit stage left.
That's what I say, Mike. You can't get off that easy. We got too many
Okay.
questions.
Thank you. I was asked to give an update on a couple of things. I'll start with athletics. You may remember from, I think, a June presentation that I made that the high school league is developing a 3-phase process for athletic reentry. We began phase 1 on June the 15th, awaiting phase 2. It's my understanding that phase 3 would be a back to normal, full competitive schedule. We have not begun phase 2 yet, but on July 23rd, the high school league rolled out phase 1.5 to begin on August the 3rd, which was yesterday, and we have done that. We had meetings with all the high school and middle school athletic directors. The differences are minor. Basically, for the fall sports, they increased the number of participants and coaches in any one spot from 10 to 16. They allowed some closer than 6 feet drills, like a handing off of a football or pass plays and that sort of thing, but the students have to be masked. Weightlifting can be done with spotters, but the spotters stand at the end of the bars instead of over the top of the participants. So just, again, very, very few changes. Have no time frame for phase 2.0 or phase 3.0, but that's currently where we are with the athletic reentry. I will tell you that Lexington 1 proposed to the high school league a plan that somehow became dubbed the Lexington 1 plan. It was not the Lexington 1 plan. It was a plan proposed by Lexington 1, and it basically we were requesting a flip of the athletic schedule, where the lower risk sports like baseball and softball would be played in the fall, and the higher risk sports, wrestling and football, would be played in a spring, probably in a January, a spring 1 time frame. That proposal was rejected. We appealed that proposal. There was an appeal held on July 22nd, I believe, and after about 2.5 hours, the appellate panel decided to table that decision until at or around August the 10th. That would be following a 2-day training session that they're having today and tomorrow. And so we proceeded with that, but then we later withdrew that request. And the reason being, we felt that if this plan were approved, and we didn't know if it would be or not, but if it were approved on or around August the 10th, that was just too late in the summer to ask schools across the state to change their entire athletic competition schedule and have baseball and softball and those sort of things in the fall. So we, again, have withdrawn that for the betterment of Lexington 1 and all school districts, because, again, we just felt like it was just too much to ask in too short a period of time. If it were June, we may have pursued it, but it being mid-August, we felt it was in everybody's best interest to withdraw that. As far as the next thing I'll talk about is what we're calling a student safety pledge, and Mr. Salters alluded to this earlier. Molly Spearman has required that all students and staff wear masks on buses and at schools at all times. Prior to that declaration last week, we had already developed a pledge that we were planning on, and still plan on, having our students and parents sign for the face-to-face instruction. And basically, it is a pledge saying that if I'm coming to school face-to-face, I will adhere to certain standards. I will follow good hand sanitizing regimen. I'll stay home if I'm sick. I'll do all those things that we've been preaching all summer and all spring long about COVID-19. But the real emphasis is that I am pledging as a student to wear a mask at all times.
And
that-
may I interrupt for
Yes,
just one
yes.
second, Mr. Caldwell? This was actually a suggestion brought by our own Ms. Green.
And we followed up on it
And
immediately.
this was one of her suggestions earlier on, and I think it's, thank you, Ms.
Well,
Green.
the state superintendent finally caught on and decided that it was worth doing that. So realizing that we have other options for students, if they don't want to wear a mask, then they could certainly, be a part of the virtual learning academy. We also recognize that there will be students who, for some medical reason or some behavioral reason, aren't able to wear masks. And our remedy to that is we would refer those students to a 504 determination team or an IEP team if they already have an IEP. And then that team could decide if we need to make an accommodation for masks, meaning that they wouldn't have to wear one, or perhaps they wear a face shield instead of a mask. So again, our thought was to start at grade 2. The state superintendent has said all students, so we're looking at all of our students, and we certainly recognize that a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old is going to have a much more difficult time wearing a mask than a 10th grader. So we will work through those processes, and it is not our intent to make students go to a virtual environment, but certainly if they just absolutely do not want to wear a mask, and that's part of the pledge, then that is an option that will be made for them. The last thing I want to talk about is transportation. And just as a quick background, the survey results that we received recently indicated that the survey that parents filled out where they wanted virtual, they wanted face-to-face, they also indicated whether they wanted to have transportation to school. And looking at those surveys, about 15% of the parents who responded have requested morning transportation. About 24% chose transportation for the PM, and PM is just about always greater than the AM. We usually have about 60% or more students who ride the bus each day. So our numbers were much, much lower than we anticipated, and that is a good thing. And in fact, from Howard, Mr. Bissell's presentation, the number of students who have chosen virtual education has risen since the last time I looked at these numbers. So the more that go virtual, obviously the less that ride the bus. So we're looking at a much smaller cohort of students who are going to request to ride the bus. At the same time, with the mask mandate that the state superintendent came up with, it also increased our capacity on the buses from just a little under 50% to about 2/3, about 66, 67%. So we have less ridership, and we now have more capability to put more students on the bus each day. So that was certainly trending in the right direction. So with that in mind, well, actually not in mind, but at the same time, we were getting feedback from our administration about the proposed bell schedule. Particularly from the middle school, because the middle school started at 9 and it ended at 4:15, and it was the latest dismissal in the district. So that was causing some issues and concerns with childcare, with administrative coverage, with students who may arrive on campus at 7, not start until 9, and not leave until after 4. So the first thing that was asked of us is there any way we could have the dismissal time mirror the high schools? Instead of 4:15, make it 3:50, and we were able to accommodate that. Through more conversations and with the Child Care Working Committee began looking at their restraints and their issues around child care, it became more and more apparent that this bell schedule was causing maybe some undue burden on some parents employees who needed child care. So the question was asked, is there any way, what's the possibility of being able to have a bell schedule that doesn't necessarily mirror the way it used to mirror in what we call now a normal year, but could we change it around some? So I couldn't be more proud of our transportation department because they immediately jumped in and we studied the data. We looked at the riderships at all the different schools, not just district-wide. And what we've been able to do is we did not change the elementary bell schedule at all. It begins at 7:50 and ends at 2, which is a little later start and a little earlier dismissal. We have been able to change the start time for the middles and high schools to 8:30. It was 9. And the dismissal time is now 3:20 instead of 3:50. So if you look back in time, historically, that's pretty close to what a regular bell schedule is like in a regular year. We purposely did not change the 2 o'clock dismissal. That's a little early for elementaries, but we are staggering the dismissals, and Mr. Salters alluded to that earlier. And because we're doing that and we're having to stagger the students on the buses, we just felt like we needed that extra time, particularly this first semester, to make sure we can get those kids loaded properly and taken home before we start the middle and high routes. So again, the bell schedules will be 8:30 to 3:20 for middle and highs, and the elementary remains the same, 7:50 to 2 o'clock. And I think that is all I have. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions, board? Thank you. Board, let's just take a minute. I just want to take a minute and finish, and I want to thank them and the teams that are working so hard on this, and let us just thank
Absolutely.
everybody.
I just wanted to come back to a data point that Dr. Talley shared earlier, I believe off Dr. Guyton's question. I think, Dr. Talley, you shared a different data point that answered a different question, so I just wanted to come back. You talked about we had not met with 54 students. I think that number is the number from the spring that we did not engage with over the spring virtual learning experience. Is that correct? Because it's more than 54 students that we haven't heard from as we are logging, or as we're gathering data for the fall. Is that correct? I want to clarify that.
What I was responding to was what we had to submit, Dr. Little, to the state. The students since March, we're not able to
Gotcha.
contact.
Okay, so I wanted to clarify that, but I
Yes.
think,
Is that
Dr.
not-
Guyton, you may have asked a different question, and I just wanted to make sure that
Yeah,
we
so
answered your question.
I guess my question was more, and thank you for the information, but my question was more directed at, okay, of our 27,000 students, we've had 6,700 who have enrolled in virtual. Have all the other ones said face-to-face, or is there a cohort where we don't know yet, and therefore we're going to have to default them into,
Yeah, I
hybrid
apologize, yes.
versus virtual?
So the answer I gave you is the wrong answer to your question, but to your question, we are still trying to reach out to students who've not responded. Also, we probably have students who are in Power School who have withdrawn from our schools and didn't tell us. So we do have some of that. I don't have a number for you, Dr. Guyton,
Well,
and
if
I
I could add to
apologize
that,
for
if you
giving
don't
the wrong
mind,
answer.
because I've been watching the numbers as it relates to transportation. The survey closed, I think, a week ago or so, and at that time, about 88% of the families had responded. So that, if I do my math correctly, that's about 3,100 students that we have not heard from.
Yeah, I like the 54 better.
Well, I love
Let's get in the car, we can just figure this out tonight.
Having said that, I don't know how many of those 3,100 have been contacted yet, but I do know this. When the survey closed, about 6,500 families had chosen virtual. Mr. Bissell reported at 6,700, so we know at least 200 have, and I feel certain that many more of those have been contacted. But we are working towards, touching those families as well. I even factored in, what if all 3,100 chose to come face-to-face and chose transportation? What does that look like? And we're still in the 30% range for buses. So I even factored that in, knowing that the likelihood of that is almost impossible, but just in case what it would look like, and we're still well under where we are. And as one other point, the 54 last count from the State Department was down to 34. So we have 34 families from this summer, or from this spring, that we have been unable to make contact with. So that's.
I'll add one more data point to get that even more confusing. Said that kindergarten and first grade numbers are unusually low, which indicates that they haven't done what they normally would do over the summer and register. So we anticipate that could happen as soon as we open online registration and into the week or so before school. We're expecting a crush at the 5K, 4K, and grade 1 level.
Gotcha. Okay. And Mr. Caldwell, to your presentation regarding student services, student safety, those kind of things, I think one of the things we haven't really discussed or talked about, and I just pulled the data from, this is from DSS's website. The week of March 16th through March 22nd, the Child Protective Services, the intakes were down 46%. That was first week. 44% 55%, 33%, 46%. I mean, these numbers range anywhere from 40 to 55%. And so, you know, I think while we can all agree that any plan we come up with is not going to be ideal or, you know, absolute, our schools are our #1 safety measure for children. And the data clearly points to that. And so I certainly appreciate, you know, what everyone has put into this. It's definitely been a labor of love and hardship and sacrifice across the board. So, I mean, those are big numbers. Those are important numbers to remember. So, you know, that's kind of the backbone, I guess, to a lot of this.
Yes.
So, thank you.
I would like to thank you for including the pledge, the mask and social distancing pledge, because to Dr. Guyton's point, school is so important, and we want to be back face to face, and we want all of our students back in the building and our teachers to be well and healthy. And that's going to take all of us working together, and that includes the students working with us and the parents working with us, because we're not going to accomplish this if we're not all committed to taking care of each other. Dr. Little has hit that time and time again. And this is a time for us to, you know, lead with humility and sign the pledge and model the behavior for our children and model the correct behavior for our neighbors, because this face-to-face, back-to-school thing is only going to work if we do it the right way and do it together. Thank you.
And then, Mr. Stacy, just to memorialize, again, if you choose the 100% virtual option, your access to Lexington 1 after-school activities is not inhibited or prohibited in any way, correct?
That's
correct.
Me or Jeff?
Okay, I just want to thank all of you, and I know this is just the tip of the iceberg, and the iceberg is huge, and I think one of the main components is our teachers, and going back to they're getting ready this summer. They're all doing the professional development, and the bus drivers, the cafeteria people, everybody, the custodians are getting ready. So board, I just think we should just thank them. This meeting normally, I can tell you, because I've been on the board a long time, this board meeting usually lasts about 17 minutes on a typical year. And we definitely don't discuss percentages of kids wearing masks in buses. I mean, I've never heard that discussion until this year. So I just want to thank all of you for all the hard work, and Mr. Bissell for taking on a role that's just brand new and leading the way. So thank y'all all for leading the way. Okay.
I do have another question. I was waiting to see if it got answered. I got a call on the way here from a special ed teacher, and they got a call today that everything was kind of being flip-flopped around, and that the virtual students and the regular ed students, the AA, BB students, they're all going to be kind of put together in a pool, and then teachers are going to have to figure out amongst themselves how to divvy those students up. Do we know anything about that?
I can respond to that. Today, Dr. Balo had a meeting with special educators, Ms. Garris. What we're trying to do is still look at our schedules, and many of our special education parents want their children who are going virtual to have the same teacher they've had in the past. So what we're trying to do is look at our numbers, and we're working with HR to determine if in fact special ed teachers could have a caseload of students and teach them virtually and keep those same students. So we haven't finalized that. We're just in the throes of making those decisions at the moment. But we haven't made any final decisions.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
At this time, Dr. Little, is there anything else you want to add to that category before we move to 10.3?
No, Madam Chair. Thank you for your patience for the amount of information we have tonight, and we will provide the board another update on the 18th.
Great.
Can we get some of this in writing as well? like the reports that were given tonight.
Well, certainly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, but I took down some numbers and stuff, but it'd also be good if we shared this with the community. I mean, these are like very good numbers that we had, good data.
We are sharing, I think, a number of this. I'm going to turn that over to Mary Beth Hill.
And we just weren't given anything besides the agenda before the board meeting. So that was, I've been sitting up there trying to write as fast as I could.
So, Ms. Garza, much of this information is on our Stronger Together website or will be shortly. In addition, remember, we're videotaping this, and so any of the public can watch this at any time. It's out there for them to watch, rewatch, which many of them do, evidently. So that's also helpful information. If there's something, though, you'd like, let us know, and we'll get it for you. But we are making every effort to make sure. In fact, there's a tweet scheduled for first 7 o'clock in the morning because we figured 9 o'clock at night was a little too late, actually a text message. So we've been tweeting from here, but we are, I have a text message scheduled to go out first thing tomorrow morning to give the link to the new schedule so that people can see their elementary, middle, and high schedule. We thought that too important to go out tonight and perhaps get lost. So we're texting that out first thing in the morning at 7 a.m.
Okay. I just know some students don't have internet access, and I know some that have
That's
hotspots and
You're exactly right. That's why
limited data, so they can't sit here and watch, a
Right.
meeting for an hour and a half just to get little tidbits of information.
Well,
Thank you.
that's exactly why we've started texting some of this, because we were getting some of that information.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Madam Chair, that is the end of
We're
my
now going to move
report.
to 10.3, which we're going to discuss the Title IX policy, and I believe we're going to turn it over to Mr. Stacy and Board. This is for information only, so Mr. Stacy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The U.S. Department of Education issued new and revised Title IX regulations in May 2020. The new regulations are focused solely on sexual harassment in educational institutions and do not impact existing regulations on other Title IX topics like athletics or single-sex education. The new regulations, which are set to go into effect August 14, 2020, provide a narrow definition of sexual harassment in an educational setting and outline very specific steps and processes for how K-12 school districts must investigate and address allegations of sexual harassment in the educational setting. Given the complexity of what educational entities are being asked to implement in a very short period of time, and during a time that our focus needs to be on COVID-19, at least 18 states have sued to delay implementation of the Title IX regulations. The district reviewed and received various drafts and guidance at the end of July. The South Carolina School Boards Association issued its model policy Thursday, July 23rd. So the South Carolina School Boards Association policy would be considered a replacement policy to our existing student and staff sexual harassment policies. And we've had various attorney groups that recommend that we look at this as a standalone policy. So Halligan, Mahoney, and Williams, Duff, Freeman, and Lyons, Meredith in my office, all think that we probably want to look at this as a standalone policy and not replace our current sexual harassment policy for staff and the one for students. The reality is that the regulations are complex and burdensome. One of our obligations is to conduct training for relevant staff. So we have a 3-hour Title IX training for the district and school administrators that'll cover the basics on August 12th, 2020. We anticipate that we can use the training to obtain a deeper understanding of our Title IX obligations and make a sound policy recommendation to you when we bring a policy to you for first reading on August 18th, 2020. A standalone policy would allow us to outline our Title IX obligations while keeping a policy on sexual misconduct that doesn't meet the higher Title IX standard, but that we as a district would want to address and stop on the front end. Title IX has a narrow definition of sexual harassment. It includes quid pro quo, sexual assault as defined by the Clery Act, or crimes under the Violence Against Women Act, or conduct that is so severe and pervasive that it denies equal access to an educational program. In our current standard, the words is severe or pervasive, and that one word, or and, is a big change. And so basically, under Title IX language, a single act of misconduct would not be addressed as sexual harassment unless it's quid pro quo or a crime. And what we want to do is we want to be able to report and address misconduct before it gets to that point. And so the example that was given to me by Meredith was that, if a coach looked at a young lady walking down the hall and said, "Oh man, you look really sexy in that outfit," that might not raise to the standard of a Title IX harassment complaint, but that would be something that we would definitely want to address. And so that's the idea. So I think what we're going to do is when we go to this training on the 12th, we'll get better information. We'll bring to you a Title IX policy, but we'll know whether it's going to be the standalone policy as recommended by our attorneys or whether it's going to be a replacement policy that models the School Board Association. Either way, we're going to have a Title IX sexual harassment policy, and we're also going to try to address sexual misconduct at a lower level. So that's coming August 18th, and I look forward to sharing that with you.
And I think, Mr. Stacy, one of the things is that law has passed. And so even if our current policy that we have tonight does not match that law, the law supersedes that policy, and we would adhere to the law and we would bypass the policy, because the way this rolled out, it has been so fast. And to be honest, we haven't gotten enough information. I know Ms. Siebert's working on that. We haven't gotten enough information to gel that policy. So the law takes precedence. Am I saying that correctly?
That is correct, but
And it's actually, I'm sorry, it's actually like an administrative rule, not a law, right?
And I would say to you too, again, 18 states have sued.
Yeah.
There could be an injunction that would delay the implementation beyond August 14th. But, and Meredith thought that we would hear something on that yesterday or today, but we haven't. But just the background on this thing, it's really about colleges.
Right.
And it's really about students in college with professors, and that's where this is coming. And it really involves a lot more people. Like, we'll have to have a Title IX coordinator, an investigator, a decision maker, and then an appeals person. And so it really is very specific about what you do at each level. Mm-hmm. And so, and we're going to adhere to it. I mean, we don't condone sexual harassment at any level, but we want to do what's right for our kids.
Right. Okay. Thank
Thank
you. Any questions or comments, board, regarding that? I guess stay tuned, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we are getting to the end. We're now to 11.0, which is items for board information, and board, we don't have any tonight. And 12.0 is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Do I have a second? Thank you. Oh, Mr. Oswald beat you. I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please stand up, and we are in adjournment, and thank y'all for everything.